Good evening, everybody. It's the Monday Smash on a Thursday. How's everybody doing? Alongside Ira Schoffel, the managing editor of Warchant.com. My name is Tom Lang, broadcasting here from the 93.3 studios in Tallahassee. Thanks to our friends at the radio station for loaning the studios. Ira, what's going on, man? We're in the same area code. It's a nice place to be.
It's good to see you back in the 850, buddy. We've been missing you. Looking forward to seeing you some this weekend.
Yeah, well, there will be dances to be had. I'm going to ask you about that later. Like, what's the number that you hit the dance floor for at a wedding reception? Yeah, I'm sneak peeking. I'm looking at you right now for the reaction.
There's usually a correlation between the number of hard liquor drinks.
Are we ditching the red stripe and we're going to the
if you want me to dance, it's going to have to be more than red stripe.
Okay, all right. Suggestions for hard liquor for Ira. See, that even the New York accent came out there for a second. Hit us up in the chat here on Warchant TV. This is the Monday Smash special edition presented by State Farm agent Russ Voorhis. We'll tell you more about Russ Voorhis in a little bit, but he's an awesome supporter of what we do at Warchant TV. And Ira, this is a time where you're kind of in between. If you're just a Florida State football primary fan, there's a lot going on for Florida State. Obviously, spring football is not that far away. The tour of duty that we get to see ourselves as media members comes up next week. The NFL Combine's a thing that we need to pay attention to now, Ira, because Florida State sent a dozen players there, and that's begun. Basketball gets a big win. Nobody really missed from the floor for long stretches over NC State. And then baseball is a perfect 7-0, so there's a lot going on right now.
There is, man, for sure. And it's, I think all of it's good, really. I mean, again, basketball is still, middling as a program right now. They're 9-8 in the ACC, so it's not, things aren't great there. But yeah, a really good start to the season for baseball, and they've got a big weekend coming up. It's on the road, but it should be an informative weekend. They're playing some bigger schools than they probably played so far. And then, like you said, spring football coming up, tour duty, and the combine. It's a good time, man. There's usually a downtime, but there's a lot going on.
No, there is. And today, somebody who had a very good day, he's at 292 pounds. He's 6'4", and he ran a sub 4.8 40-yard dash. I think that's probably the headline today. It's Braden Fisk's performance at the NFL Combine. I think he kind of went viral in terms of his at the size and the speed that he ran. Sub 4.8 40. That's an official time now. His unofficial actually matched the laser time at 4.78. I guess Mike Norvell feels a little bit better about getting beat by Braden from time to time in those races in practice. My man can move.
That's a good point. Yeah, that's funny. And really, you just don't think about defensive linemen. It's always kind of like when they run the 40, you always kind of feel like, okay, what does this really tell us? And I know the first 10 yards is really what they're focusing on a lot of times. But Braden Fisk makes a lot of plays away from the point of attack. I mean, he makes plays at the point of attack. He makes plays in the backfield. He's not just a guy who goes and hawks down plays from behind, but he does both. And that 40 speed and we saw it. I mean, how many times did we see it where, he'd take a really good angle and run down a play down near the sideline or up the field because of his energy, but also because he's really freaking fast. I mean, like everybody's like, oh man, he's got a great motor, and he does have a great motor, but he's also really fast. It's not just a guy who tries hard.
I remember last spring when he was in the non-contact jersey, he was able to do some drills, and they do this one drill. It's more about, I think, conditioning than anything else, but they've got the pads on, and they run, and then they take off towards the sideline. It's almost like pursuing a play towards the sideline. I think, it's a whistle drill, 1, 2, 3, and go. And I remember how quick he was to the sideline because we were standing over there, and I was in my own head saying, well, if he can play in the trenches, that's going to help because he's going to be making a ton of tackles in pursuit. And then what we came to find out is he's just a really good football player. So the film's going to match the 40 time. And then what happened at the Senior Bowl as well. He was very impressive there, Ira. And you got to talk to him after it was done. And I think he made you a promise that he kept today.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, it was pretty funny. I was thinking about it because Braden Fisk was not a guy that was real boastful. I didn't think during his time at Florida State, like he wasn't like a wallflower. He had funny things to say, but he also, I don't know, he was pretty, I don't say modest, but he didn't brag about himself a whole lot. I didn't think. And at the end of that interview at the Senior Bowl, he said, I said, what's coming next? And he said, we've got to I'm going to go back to Miami, start training for the combine. We got the combine at the end of February, and then it's time to go to run a real fast 40. And I was like, okay, well, I like the confidence. And I didn't realize he would run the fastest 40 of any of the defensive tackles. And I mean, just again, like you said, it's not like he's a 275-pound defensive tackle. I mean, he's 290 plus, and he runs like some defensive ends, quite honestly.
Well, and one thing that we talked about, I think we knew after the season was over, is like if Florida State was going to put its best foot forward on defense, it was going to be that defensive line, just in terms of impressing the NFL. And so Braden Fisk has wowed people since the Senior Bowl and every workout subsequent to that, including the combine. Jared Verse had a really good day, and we know that he's a freak of an athlete. We know he's going to interview well. Ira, he's got a good broad jump. He's got a good vertical. He's got sub 4.6 speed. You know, maybe if they want to pick and prod, they could say he's not 6'6" or something like that. But extremely impressive. And then Fabian Lovett, he's kind of the man who was lost in the shuffle preseason. If he was going to be healthy, Ira, he would have been Florida State's best defensive tackles and somebody we talked about a little bit more. But you're just looking at the wingspan. You're looking at the basics of the measurables. If his medical comes back okay, I mean, 3 for 3, Ira, in terms of NFL draft prospects, these guys are making themselves some money in the offseason as they're prepping for the draft.
Yeah, Verse was one that I was really interested to see because I had the sense that he was not going to measure great, and he's not Jermaine Johnson in terms of his measurables. But man, that with 4.58, 4.57, 4.58, 40. I mean, that is flying for a defensive end. I mean, he's 250 plus pounds, and he's another guy that plays with great motor, will interview well. I think all those guys I think are going to represent themselves really well in terms of the interviews and that kind of process as well. They're bright guys. And Fabian Lovett, like you said, Fabian, to me, when Fabian's on the field and healthy, he's as disruptive as a defensive tackle. I mean, he'd be up there with all the great Florida State defensive tackles. When you look at him on the field in those moments, the challenge has been just staying healthy and being on the field more. But I think I got the sense, man, I really think Florida State did him a solid this past season by not making it. I mean, you and I were out there for a lot of practice. They did not practice him a lot. He's a guy who played 5-6 years of college football. They didn't make him play 60 snaps, 50 snaps, and he was on the field for, in a lot of games, 30 to 40 snaps, sometimes less than that. And so they were really helpful. I think they did a really good job of keeping him as healthy as possible so that now he can have these opportunities. So, and he's a guy, because he's so physical and his game is not like Braden Fisk's game. I mean, he's so much more of a guy who's just going to throw bodies around that I don't know that his 40 time is going to really matter. I assume he's going to run at a pro day. But I don't know that it's going to matter. He's so strong and physical that I don't think he's going to get dinged too much if he doesn't run a great 40.
Well, that's probably the thing to talk about here tonight, is to expand that discussion, because in the Mike Norvell era, or if we're talking about draft picks and projecting up to the NFL, Jermaine Johnson was the first to really, signal. It was through the transfer portal, but to signal what this program could be. And he talked Florida State up at every turn. Jared Verse did the same thing at his combine interviews yesterday when he was speaking highly of John Papuchis and the development that happened at Florida State. He says, turn on the tape from Albany, turn on the tape at Florida State. You see the difference. They made me what I am today. But you consider what they're going to put together this year in this draft class. Next year, Ira, assuming that guys stay healthy, the Paytons, Josh Farmers, Daryl Jackson, maybe some of the transfers like Sione Lolohea or Tamiwa Durajaye. I mean, Florida State's reputation as a defensive line factory, I think we're watching it happen in real time right now. And this might be the mixture of the portal and then some of the homegrown guys finally blending together to where Florida State is going to be, again, just a destination based upon the money that they can make you at the professional level.
Yeah, and that can only help in recruiting. Again, like so many times when these recruits come on campus, and the coaches are selling their resume. The coach, say a big time defensive tackle is thinking about coming to Florida State. The first thing he's going to want to know is, okay, who do you have in the league? Who is this guy coached? Those are some of the questions that they're going to ask. Well, Odell Higgins has an incredible track record, but not many of those guys are still playing in the NFL. And they're not in the consciousness. It'll be really good to have, man, you might have 2 starting defensive tackles in the NFL next year that can say, hey, I played at Florida State. And then you add in, as you said, some of the guys coming behind them. I think Josh Farmer and Daryl Jackson, to me, are no doubt NFL guys. So it would be really good for Florida State's defensive line recruiting. They've done a great job in the portal. They have not done quite as good a job recruiting in high schools on the defensive line the last couple of years. But if you start putting 4, 5, 6 guys in the NFL that play that position, I think it gets you kind of where you want to be.
Right, and that's the whole thing. The reputation allows for high school recruiting to look like portal recruiting. I mean, Florida State knocks it out the park routinely in the portal. And this year was a weird one because it felt like they weren't getting anybody on campus, and then it was just a barrage. And now here we are, and this roster looks as it does heading into spring. As we're getting into more days of the combine, we'll be getting some updates as we're either at the nuptial proceedings or the reception on Saturday. That there's going to be some stuff coming, Ira. I'm just wondering, is there a player that you can't wait to see on NFL Network as they're running their 40s or putting up their numbers, or a guy that you're intrigued by? Like, I wonder how the discussion is going to center around a certain player. Is anybody that you like of the dozen Florida State has at the combine that hasn't gone yet?
I'm really excited about Renardo Green, and I think we had talked about this maybe 2 weeks ago. We didn't do a smash last week. The reason we're doing the smash on Thursday is because we had some scheduling conflicts this week, so we didn't want to miss 2 weeks in a row. But we didn't do one last week. But 2 weeks ago, Renardo Green was a guy I think I said I really wanted to see, and I could see him maybe being a guy that plays 10 years in the NFL. I think he's a pretty complete player, and he's very focused, and he's got really good tools. And I was really excited to see the scouting report Lance Zierlein. I'm not sure how to pronounce his name, from the NFL.com. I put up some of his capsules this week on the website on Warchant. Man, he is all about Renardo Green. Loves Renardo Green, and part of it is I think it's a little bit because he's got the 2 receivers from LSU I think he's got them as his top 2 receivers, and Renardo Green played his butt off in that game. So I think it's kind of like that elevated him in his stature, but he's got Renardo as one of the top cornerbacks in the draft. And I think he's going to test really well. He's a much better athlete, I think, than people realize. So he's one I'm really excited to see how he does.
He's got a professional mindset too.
Yes.
Which, I mean, you've interviewed him a bunch, so you would agree with that. It's I remember the Tuesday or the Wednesday after the LSU game, and we got Adam Fuller. Like, he was out at the practice fields. And he said, sometimes we really enjoy having one-on-ones too.
Yeah.
Everybody was talking about LSU and their receivers, and one-on-ones and the advantage. And he goes, sometimes one-on-ones are an advantage for us too. And he was talking about Renardo Green, and I totally agree with you. Unheralded is a good thing when you're a cornerback. Like, to me, if no news is good news, that means A, no big plays are being made on you, and B, maybe you're not being targeted all that much either, because an offensive coordinator knows this is not how I'm going to win a football game, is living by 8 targets at number 8 for Florida State, or Xavier Rhodes back in the day. That was the knock. Where are the interceptions? Well, there are no targets because he's a good player. I remember Asante Samuel, a recent NFL player for Florida State. Ira, the quarterback rating against him was worse than if it was just throwing incompletions. Like, there's a quarterback rating that's base. If you go 0 for 5, it was worse than that against Asante Samuel. So this is where I think you're correct. Renardo Green kind of has that sneaky status where maybe 5 years ago or 5 years from now we say, man, we really had a good one. And all we were worried about is Omarion Cooper or Fentrell Cypress or AZ. But Renardo was the steady Eddie of the group.
Yeah, really, really impressive. And the way he turned around his career. And he's a guy that, again, 3 years ago, I think most of us thought, 2.5 years ago, most of us thought he's going to end up transferring. He's going to end up finishing his career somewhere else. It just didn't seem like it was working out. Not that he couldn't play, but he got thrown into the lineup as a cornerback as a freshman. Didn't look great. The program was kind of a wreck at that point. Comes back, gets some opportunities at safety. Doesn't really seem to fit there. They move him back to corner. And at that point, I'm thinking, okay, well, man, they just can't figure out what to do with this guy. And then we start watching one-on-ones. It's like, oh, shoot, he may be their best cover corner, and then has 2 really good seasons back to back. So he's got everything up. To me, he's got everything going for him, especially if he tests well. If he tests well, I think he's going to do great in the draft because he's got tons of film. He is, as you said, a very hard worker, focused. He's not a guy that's going to just do a lot of foolishness. And he's been through adversity, come through the other side. I mean, when he goes and when the NFL scouts talk to Josh Storms or the assistant coaches, and they talk about where he was 3 or 4 years ago to where he is now, and coming through the injuries and all that, that is all, it's like plus, 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 plus. I think he's a guy is going to do really well. And then also I was listening to Aslan and Corey on Wake Up talking about next year's draft and next year's combine and how many guys might be at that combine. And that's going to be a fun one too. I mean, this is, again, it kind of, for the NFL fans who are casual college football fans, I think it's a big deal for your college program to have a lot of guys in the combine and the draft process, because there are a lot of fans who like Florida State, but they're not diehard. They're more of NFL fans. Well, now they're seeing all these FSU guys again, and I think it's only good for the program.
Yeah, simply put, it matters more to us now. Like the combine was like, oh, I wonder how this kid's going to do. Maybe he can be a day 2 guy. And now it's, man, they're littering it. And actually, we had a discussion about this on the Jeff Cameron show. Put up the video last night from that segment discussion. But before we get to talking about this upcoming spring and what Florida State is bringing back, I did want to touch on the receivers, both of them. And we'll get to Johnny in a second, because you and I have been on the same side largely, I think, in the Johnny discussion. As the years have gone on, we're both pro Johnny Wilson and what he can be. But we were talking about on the JCS hour, like, this is a humongous week and pro day as well for Keon Coleman to remind people just how good of an athlete he is. He was on a basketball program that's kind of good at Michigan State. Like, you don't fake your way as a Spartan on that basketball team. And what he was before he got dinged up and before there was a nagging injury that Keon Coleman had suffered around the midpoint of the season. I mean, this is a first-round talent, Ira, but this is a very deep wide receiver draft, so he's got competition that he's got to overcome. It's a big week for Keon Coleman in Indianapolis.
It is, and it's kind of it's going to be fun to watch, because I think he is going to do really well, and I think he's he knows football, and I think he's going to really light it up when they talk to the scouts, when they get him on a grease board, whether it's at this event or whether it's when he goes to the facilities and they start talking concepts. He's a really bright guy. I mean, he knows football at a high level. I think all that's really positive. And I think the fact that, as you said, it was kind of a perfect storm of things working against him, particularly in the second half of the season. He dealt with the injuries. He dealt with an injury that kind of slowed him down. We never got an answer for what exactly it is. I think it's like a knee bruise or something like that. It wasn't something that needed to be corrected, but it was something that was going to slow him down and affect his ability to practice. So he had that going on. Plus, the offense kind of started stagnating a little bit, I think, in the second half season, partly because he and some other guys weren't healthy. Then he loses Jordan Travis at the end of the season. And so, yeah, I mean, if you think back to those first 3 or 4 weeks, I mean, he was as big a name as anybody in college football. He was putting on a show with 3 touchdowns against LSU. I mean, but it's almost like some of that's been forgotten. For his benefit, he might have been better shutting it down, for the, what I'm saying? Because just people aren't they're not remembering what they saw at his best. And I think, he skipped, look, man, like, fans got mad, and I understand everybody got mad. Coaches probably got mad at all those guys skipped the Orange Bowl. But, a lot of those guys skipped the Orange Bowl because they weren't healthy, and that game didn't mean what they thought it was going to mean. So, Keon's going to be healthy. Jaheim Bell got healthy. Braden Fisk got healthy. A lot of those guys got healthy by skipping that game. And I think he's got a chance to do really well. And I'm with you on Johnny too. That was the one of all the evaluations that guy from the NFL.com that we ran on our site the other day. I didn't think his Johnny evaluation, I think he missed the mark. He basically made it sound like he's a slow 6'7" receiver, and I don't buy that at all. I think he's much more quick than people realize.
Yeah, I don't know what the 40 time is going to read, but we all know that, I mean, at that size, you shouldn't be able to gain separation off the line of scrimmage as often as Johnny did against really good competition too. And the thing was, Ira, I thought he was getting better at the routine catch, which has been an issue for him before he got hurt down the stretch this season. And he had some clutch to him, a lot of clutch to him. Like, that's the other part of it. Like, we're talking about, he'd have a case of the drops and everybody, the world would see it. But then if it was third and got to have it, or fourth and got to have it, like there was at Chestnut Hill, I mean, there's a throw on the first drive of the game on 4th down. That's a low percentage throw, and he makes the catch and he makes it look easy. Between that and the blocking and the quickness off the line of scrimmage, you don't duplicate those measurables, Ira. You're going to take a chance on a player like Johnny Wilson, and he's got a chance to make a roster and a second contract, as long as his legs underneath him work, second contract, a third contract, because he does all the little things as well. It's a valuable dude to add to a roster on a Sunday.
Yeah, I think the key for him is going to be getting in a good system with good coaches. One of the things that we talked about, 2 years ago when he first came to Florida State, one of the comments that Ron Dugan's made was that when we talked about the drop passes and all that, and he said we focus on the positives with him because at Arizona State that was the knock on him is he had the drop passes, and he kind of got the message. It was one of those things where Coach Dugans was basically saying maybe at his prior school, he didn't say this, but the message I got was maybe at his prior school he kind of got negative feedback for the drop passes, where Florida State, Mike Norvell, their approach is always going to be on the positive side, almost always. And I think that was good for Johnny. So I think it's going to be important what system he gets in, what quarterback he gets with. Is he get with a quarterback who really will let him trust him? And because I got to think confidence is part of that. And so will he get in the right place where they'll really take advantage of it? I think that's going to be big for him.
It's going to be fascinating to watch. Again, that happens all weekend long. You can stay tuned in to warchant.com for all the updates from the Combine. We've got daily updates right now. There's a thread on the site in the Tribal Council running down what's going on with the defensive linemen and the linebackers. But last thing I'll say about this, Ira, is, again, just reflecting on Keon Coleman. It's not just the practices that we got to see, which behind the scenes, the athleticism that he flashed on a daily basis was remarkable. But if you really stop and think, if you're in the chat right now and you think about what Keon did this season, even though it ended unceremoniously, think about the punt returns and the athleticism he showed there, the catch against Syracuse, the LSU game, a couple of deep shots, difficult catches in traffic. Like, this dude could be a first rounder. It's just a matter of what numbers he puts up. It's going to be fascinating to document.
Yeah, could you imagine if in a different world, Tom, in a world where the SEC and ESPN don't just do whatever the hell they want and don't screw other schools and other conferences, if Florida State had been in the playoff, how many times we would have seen that catch against Syracuse? Like that, what that might have done for those guys. And again, I just said, I think it benefited some of those guys not playing in the Orange Bowl because now they got healthy. But they all would have played if Florida State made the playoff. Every single one of them would have played. Jared Verse said this week before the Combine, he said if he had to do over again, he probably would have tried to play and get everybody else to play too. It's just in the time, that was the decision they made. But if those, Keon, I don't know if he could have gotten healthy. Like, that's the question. He would have had about 3 weeks to get healthy, and that would have been interesting to see what he looked like if he had gotten about 3 weeks after the Florida game to kind of really get back to what he was. But, because that catch that you just pointed out, like, that's the catch they're going to, whenever he gets drafted, that's the catch they're going to show. And and then the Clemson game, how clutch was that?
I didn't even bring that up. Yeah, that's my fault. It's a big play.
No, I think it's a shame. He wasn't 100% healthy. It's a shame Jordan got hurt at the end of the season. It's a shame they didn't get in the playoff. But man, he's pretty impressive.
I was talking about it today. The thing that continually makes me the most angry about the Invitational and the way it went is I go back to a moment early in the season where in practice you got Braden Fisk and Jared Verse working together with Odell. And because they were working on special teams, and so on the side, Odell's working with the entire defensive line, and the three of them are trading notes and playing chess in their brain about how to get after a quarterback. And Fisk and Verse were going to line up on the same side. Yeah. How do these two combine to make the most impact? And you're just watching it, and it was so much fun to take in at practice and just listen. You can't report on some of the things that they're saying, but Ira, by the time you get to the Florida game and you get to the ACC championship, you're seeing exactly what they were talking about come to life at a different level. And the thing that I hate about the way that it went is, those two, no matter who the opponent was, would have dominated in that game. And whether Florida State won or lost, it would have added to their legacy and how great this defense, how championship level this defense was. Those guys got robbed of an opportunity to come to mind when we talk about, as Florida State fans like myself, the best of the best who ever played here, because it just ended that night in Charlotte when it should have had at least one more act.
Yeah, the clips that you can find on Twitter or social media of them running twists together. It's good luck, man. They terrorized some offensive lines, and I think Verse said he thought the Florida game, those last two games were his best two games. They certainly were Fisk's best two games, and man, and that's again, you didn't have Darrell Jackson available, but he would have been available for the playoff.
Man.
So
Yeah.
it's just it could have been silly.
Well, it's going to get fun here soon because, again, Florida State spring practice starts a little bit later this season. March 19th is the first day of practice. We now know that. But there is a tour of duty access that we get as media members next week. We're going to talk about that, look at the spring, and then talk some more of Florida State sports on the other side of this message from Russ Forrest.
Contact Russ Voris for an auto quote today.
It's our guy, State Farm agent Russ Vorhis. By the way, I should deliver a thank you to the Warchant TV audience and podcast listeners, Ira. He has said to all of us at different times that he's been thrilled with the response. Noles supporting Noles. And that's a big thing that we like to push here at warchant.com, Warchant TV. When we do have a sponsor who has a Florida State background, nobody's more dedicated to the program. And I don't just mean Warchant TV's programming. I mean to Florida State athletics than Russ Vorhis. You're talking about scholarships. You're talking about booster status. Russ is there. He puts it the money up where he says if he's angry about something, he puts his money where his mouth is. If he's happy, he rewards the program. He's a big-time donor, and he's a big-time supporter of what we do, Ira, and he supports people throughout the Southeast.
Yeah, and that's a good point. If you do check it out, if you go to russvorhis.com or if you call the office or you go to the website and kind of put in for information, mention or if you email, mention that you like the fact that he's a Florida State guy because he actually has forwarded some of those messages to us to let us know, hey, this is working. It's been good for me. And, this is awesome. I'm getting to connect with some FSU fans for their insurance needs. And again, Russ is a really good guy. He's got 2 offices in Jacksonville, but he services Florida, Georgia, and Alabama. He's got a great staff. They're very big on customer service, and they're there for you. Again, I told the story before about how the first time I used him, I ended up not going with him because we had a situation. Kim got insurance through work. She went to work for the state. She changed jobs, so it ended up falling through with him. But man, he could not have been nicer through the whole process. And I think other people will have the same experience. So I hope people will give him a chance.
He's just somebody who gets it. So for those of you listening on the podcast, russvorhis.com. That's russvorhis.com for more information. Ira, has your brain flipped yet to spring ball? Have you allowed it to happen, or are you still thinking about the winter sports and then the beginning of baseball? Where are you at right now?
Yeah, no, we just started. Corey just wrote our first spring preview story that ran on the site a couple of days ago. I'll have one probably for tomorrow. And and I think everybody I talk to kind of expresses the same sentiment. Like, this is going to be one of the more fun springs from the standpoint of it's going to just be fascinating. I mean, there are so many things that, I think most people feel good about this team. Usually going into the spring, you either feel great about your team or you don't feel great about your team, or, or maybe you're in the middle, whatever. But I don't know that you rarely ever, I don't know how many times you go into a spring where you feel really good, but you also don't really have an idea of how it's all going to shake out. Like I think there's a ton of talent. There's a lot of returning talent. I think it's going to be a really good team. I actually did an exercise for Gene. On3 asked us to send just a list of like maybe the top 25 players on this team. Basically, if we had to pick 25 players right now, kind of like we'll do the top 40 in the summer.
Nice. You got some advanced work on that. I like it.
So I went through it yesterday. And I'll tell you, man, it was hard to narrow it down to 25. And that's not even knowing yet what some of these transfers are going to look like. So, and I put some of them in there because I expect big things from some of those guys based on what they've done. But yeah, man, this is a unique spring because you're excited, but you also have so many unknowns.
There's a lot of reps up for grabs. I come back to that as, last year was great because the windfall really happened in December, January with all the retention, right? Like the Battle's End is born and a lot of these kids are retained. And that's all well and good because Florida State had a lot of talented players. But when you get to spring, it's like, all right, who's the backup? Or what's this freshman going to do in 2 years? Like there were some position battles, but there weren't a ton. And that was both spring and fall. All right, like every day at the tour of duty, this has to be a coach's dream because every bad workout you have right now in basically what these mat drills are, these fourth quarter drills, like that can set you back when it comes down to making decisions in spring, who gets to start out with the 1s and the 2s. They can keep on these kids because competition is every day and the reps and the starting jobs are up for grabs. Like that's the fun part of this is I don't even know that it'll be sorted out at the end of spring. You might have some open questions because you've got a lot of good options at defensive back or linebacker or name your position.
It's also exciting because a lot of these juniors, a lot of these guys who are returning that have been key players and are returning for the season, a lot of them are in their money year. We'll see. Maybe they all don't go. And the nice thing about a world with NIL is they could stay in college for another year and still be able to make money. But from a standpoint of a guy like Azaria Thomas or Shaheem Brown, Josh Farmer, Daryl Jackson, you just go down the list. There are so many guys who have played a lot, have probably been starters, but this year is a huge year for them individually and as a team. So you're going to get great effort from them, even the ones who probably don't have position battles on their hands. I think you're 100% right. There's a ton of great position battles, but I don't know that, is Azaria Thomas. I mean, I think he's going to start.
Sure. Well, you're correct on the defensive line too. You're,
right.
Two of your interior guys, Patrick Payton. I mean, he's not going to sweat.
Yeah. So those guys, but there's so much on the table for them because they are, and this is a little bit different, maybe even from these last couple of years where, some of these guys have a chance to be real high draft picks. Again, Azaria is a guy, I keep going back to Azaria because he's got not only the ability and the film and I think the makeup, but he also has the measurables. He's going to test at a very high level. He's going to measure tremendously. So he's a guy that, not just like some of these other cornerbacks have been really good cornerbacks, but they're only going to be what they are physically. So, I mean, there's a lot of guys on this team that I think have a chance to be really high draft picks if they have a big year. So you have to imagine the motivation level is off the charts.
So you had to put a list of 25 players together just as an exercise. When you did that, did anything surprise you? Because typically when we do the top 40 exercises, something like, personally speaking, I'm like, man, I forgot this guy, or I really should bump him up. He's more valuable than I think he is. Did anything like that happen to you in doing a 25?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, a tricky one really was like running back, like Toafili versus Roydell Williams. Like, I don't know. I wanted to put Toafili higher, but I kind of think maybe Roydell will end up being higher. It's just hard because there's so many moving pieces. But I'll be honest with you, I did not even think. I had never contemplated the idea that DJ Uiagalelei might be the number one guy in this team.
Right.
But I put him number one. I mean, because from the standpoint of if you lost him, the impact it would have on your team if you didn't have that player, because that was one of the things they mentioned was, not just talent level, but impact and all of that. Well, I mean, man, because he has single-handedly changed our expectations really for this season. Now, not single-handedly, but kind of single-handedly, right? I mean, you wouldn't have been talking about 11-1. Jeff wouldn't have been talking about 12-0 if we were looking at Brock Glenn or Luke Rummenhock at quarterback. I don't think.
Correct. It would have been a different discussion, which is, all right, let's see how much hell these kids can raise.
Right.
Like, that's the way you talk about it. But DJ comes in and he brings a pedigree. And we've already been through one of the videos. We'll release the second not too long from now with Dominic Robinson breaking down DJU's game. And Ira, you can just see it. Like, this is he's such a fascinating player. I can't wait to cover him and see game for game, because he's so refined and professional as a quarterback. Like, you can see that he was bred to be a quarterback in the athletic realm, because he goes through his progressions. He's got polish to his mechanics and his throws. He throws a really good ball. Obviously, he's got a cannon for an arm. But then how do you have 57% completion percentage, at Oregon State, or you have a sub 60% year at Clemson? Like, he's befuddling at times, but then there's other times where you just put your jaw on the floor. It seems like an easy thing on television when you see a 15-yard completion across the field, but that's like a 50-yard throw, and he can throw it on a rope. Like, he's going to be so fun to cover, and he's got the attitude to be a bridge quarterback too. This is a one-year thing. It's a one-year relationship, but Ira, he seems like he's got the right mentality for this specific kind of role, which is, I'm here for a little bit. I'm happy to be here. This is where I wanted to be. But there's not anything extra to it. He seems like it's the right type of mentality for the task before him.
Yeah, I'm really fired up about it, honestly. I mean, I think Mike Norvell is going to be the perfect coach for him. I think for two reasons. Number one, the big one is I think Mike Norvell is so positive, and DJ has admitted it that confidence was an issue for him at Clemson. He kind of, man, the weight of the world was on him. I thought Dominic Robinson, the first video you guys did, was very eloquent in describing that. You come in as the number one quarterback in the country, and everybody thinks you're going to be the next Trevor Lawrence. And when that doesn't happen, it all goes to you, even the blame goes to you, even though there's a lot of other factors that change in that program, from the coordinators to the position players around you, and to the guys blocking for you. And he took the brunt of all that, and I think it did affect his confidence. And I think you saw an uptick last year, but I think Norvell's going to bring that confidence even higher because of just who he is as a coach. That's what he does. Then the other thing is, and Norvell mentioned it in the video that JD Piquel had with him on 3 the other day, and JD asked him, how much does your offense change when you bring in a guy like DJ? And he said, man, that's what we do. Our offense is going to change every year based on the personnel we have. And coaches can say whatever they want, and that might sound good. But again, we watched the way Jimbo operated when personnel changed, and it didn't change. He's going to run his offense, and if it's not going to work, you're just going to watch, you're going to watch Xavier Lee throw the ball into the ground 3 straight times. I mean, you're just there's not an adjustment to, okay, what do we have here? Whereas this is what Mike Norvell does. So I'm excited, man. I think DJ has been a good college football player, better than people probably think. And I think he's going to have his best year by far.
Yeah. Well, the thing that I learned, and this will come out in the second video, is there was a time at Clemson briefly where he was timid, it seemed like, in some ways.
He for sure was. Yeah.
There's going to be some cut-ups in this Oregon State stuff that Dominic had about his willingness to run, be physical and run, that I think a lot of people are going to be excited about. Because you might have the quarterback run as more of an element, more of a weapon in short yardage this season than they did with Jordan Travis at the helm. Like that, to me, Ira, like as that situation, comes, if you're in 2nd and 6 and you get to 3rd and 2 or 3rd and 1.5, like it changes the math a little bit, and it gets fun, because while Jordan was an exceptional runner and singular in what he was able to do, he wasn't a short yardage back. And like, that's this other function of what DJ can bring to the table. And I don't know that it's going to play out exactly like I think, Ira. There's a lot of stuff last year that didn't, but given the big bodies they brought in on the offensive line and the type of running back that Roydell Williams is, it just seems like there could be a little bit more snarl to the way that Florida State plays football this season, and that's exciting.
Yeah, and it's not just that he's big and is willing to run, but I think he likes it. Like, DJ's talked about, liking contact and liking, just that part of the sport. And the thing with Jordan was, and I know that, during the season, a lot of fans felt frustrated at times, and I think media probably as well, that the offense could have gone to a different level if Jordan would have run more. But that was, I think that was all part of the plan to keep Jordan healthy for that run into the playoff, to play 14, 15 games and have the season that they thought he could have. And they didn't want to get him beat up in the regular season if they could win those games. Ironically, he ends up getting hurt in freaking North Alabama game. But that was the mindset. Well, with DJ, you don't have to worry about that as much. He's not 210 pounds. I mean, he's a big dude. He's going to be bigger. Besides the defensive lineman, he's going to be bigger than everybody else on the defense. And that's fun. Now, I've always wanted to cover like the Cam Newtons, Tim Tebow's, those guys. I'm not saying he's that level of a runner, but man, it's fun to watch those guys impose their will.
But he's not Big Ben or Byron Leftwich that he's a statue at that size either. Like, he's got a clue when he gets in the open field. Again, you'll see some of the clips. It reminds me, I'm not saying it's the same because he was a pretty decent athlete when he didn't have a high ankle sprain. But Ira, when he gets moving, it reminds me of Jameis in the open field. Like, it's a little awkward-ish, but he's got vision and timing and all those things. And I see that there's a question in the chat from Gregory, and I'll answer this one to begin. Gregory says, it's crazy how you all talk crap about DJ when he was at Clemson, but love him now. Just doesn't make much sense. Would you still love him if he went to Colorado? So I got something for you, Greg.
I got something for Gregory too, so you go ahead.
I've got a link in the chat to my third and lang I wrote on DJU, and it's live now. You can go find that from his days at Clemson. And it's a full rundown of the good and the bad. Yeah. So maybe you're talking about somebody else on staff, Gregory.
Well, no, yeah. I mean, and Gregory, I get where you get where you would say that, because that has been the talking point from a lot of people and a lot of people on this staff. But I don't think these two are those people. And I remember vividly And Gregory watches Seminole headlines, and I appreciate and the thing I love about Gregory is he'll give us crap, but he's also told us when he agrees with us or he thinks we've said the right things. But when that Clemson game happened 2 years ago, and DJ had a phenomenal game against Florida State, Jeff, I think Corey too, but definitely Jeff, because we argued about it, they took that as a chance to say that Adam Fuller and the defense were not as good as we thought they were going to be, and that Adam Fuller may not be the guy because he couldn't shut down DJ. And I was like, no, man, that kid played really well. And I thought I've liked him in that game. And I've tweeted about it when he was at Clemson. They coached him in a way that there was no way he could have confidence because they made it clear they were not going to ask him to make a tough. How many times did they run him on 3rd and long? Mm-hmm. And it was just like, dude, you've sent every message possible. You have no faith in this kid, and it affected him. So no, I'm not saying I thought he was great, but I thought he was very, very good when he played Florida State 2 years ago in Doak Campbell Stadium. And I think that I've always thought that Clemson kind of screwed him up.
I agree with, and they fired their coordinator after he was gone. So that tells you it's not just a player problem. It could have been they turned the keys over to the kid, kept the offensive coordinator because they believed in the process, but they're telling you they didn't believe in any part of the process when it came to the quarterback or the offense. He was always just hard to figure out, Ira, because that article I wrote had a lot of the good from DJ, and I think it might have been before the 21 game.
I thought it was before the 2022 game, but I may be wrong.
It could be, but I just remember being so confused by DJ because again the good is it's so NFL, it's so Sunday ready, it's ridiculous. Like if he was all the best of his film, he would already be at the league. He wouldn't have come here to Florida State. And then there's just stuff that's basic where you go, what the hell? But what's crazy about it, Ira, is he doesn't turn the football over. So when he makes mistakes, it's not in the chest of a defensive back. I'm fascinated to see if Mike Norvell can hone in, reduce the misses, because if he can, and DJ throws at about 63-65% completion percentage with the receivers that he's got now that aren't 5'11 like a bunch of the kids at Oregon State, I mean, this could get really fun really fast. We'll have to see, but that's the fascination with this season.
Yeah, that's a great point. I mean, I'm not saying that I think he's going to come out and, all of a sudden be a Heisman Trophy contender, a Heisman Trophy winner. What I am saying is that he's better than I think most people think, and I think Mike Norvell is going to take him to an even higher level because of all the reasons we just talked about. But yeah, man, I could say, I think it's fair to say that it's been, I don't want to say maddening because we don't understand it with Clemson. It had to be maddening for Clemson fans. But again, how much of that could you blame on him and how much of that you blame on anybody else? But then, as you said, even at Oregon State, there are those plays where, he just missed the throws. Now, is that a lack of concentration? Is it a lack of competitiveness? I don't know, but all quarterbacks miss throws also. It's not like Jordan Travis was perfect. But I do think that that's going to be the adjustment for us this season is going to be everything's going to be compared to Jordan. We saw Jordan play for a long time, and those last 2 years were pretty freaking great for Jordan Travis. And so anytime DJ doesn't do something Jordan would have done in that situation, I think we're going to be, the natural inclination is going to be to say, oh man, Jordan makes that throw. We're not punting right here. But I got to think that, I just think Norvell's going to bring more out of him than we've seen in the past.
Yeah, I tend to agree. And the thing is, it might be unfair expectations on Mike Norvell because the evolution of Jordan Travis that we saw doesn't have many equals, like from what he was when he was 2 seasons ago, when I think he might have thrown 12 times against North Carolina on the road, maybe like 15 at most, but he was a terror on the ground, made enough good throws. From that type of player to the one that he leaves campus as, I mean, that's an unbelievable amount of development. If they do anything close to that with DJ, I mean, again, this could get really fun. So the tour of duty is next Thursday morning. I imagine, Ira, it's going to be like 5 a.m. because that's typically the way it is for Florida State. Have you gotten a time yet on it?
Are you sure it's the morning? Because I think it may be in the afternoon.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, they do. The first month when they do them, they do in the mornings.
Okay.
And then they, I think they move them to afternoon. So I think it may be in the afternoon. But yeah, we didn't get the time yet on it.
A couple of staff members may get bailed out. We've done some 5 a.m.ers or 6 a.m.
Sure.
at the facility. I wish I was here for that. I'm jealous of you guys that get to see it. But we've talked a lot about quarterback, and I think by extension some of the defensive line. Anything else that you're looking forward to next week, or like, hey, I got to make sure I happen by this particular segment group just to see where they're at?
I think to me that probably the receivers is something I'm going to really look at. I saw a one of the pictures FSU put out. Every couple of days they'll put out some pictures from tour of duty, and I like the way Destin Hill looked physically. Like it looked like maybe he's gotten a little bit in better shape. I thought there was a couple other receivers I thought maybe have started to transform their body a little bit. That's a position I'm going to really focus on because all the stuff we talked about DJ is true, and I think it's all very possible, and I've got really high hopes for him. But they have some huge shoes to fill with that receiver room, and I think they've got talent. But I really want to see Malik Benson. I really want to see what Hakeem looks like now, going into his second year, having been in the program. Some of these other receivers, does Kentron finally take that big next step? So that group, the transfers, Jalen Brown, and I mean, I think that group is probably going to be highest on my list. And then probably the young corners I'm kind of curious about, Charles Lester and those guys. Not that there's a huge opportunity to play, but just freshman corners. We saw them in person down at the Orange Bowl. Kai Bates and the other guy from South Florida, Trackman, yeah. I want to see those guys a little bit. Again, just kind of see, are they guys that maybe can help at all this year? I don't know that they're going to need a lot of help this year at DB, but I'd like to see those guys too.
It was interesting. We'll get a sense of how good of a scout Azareye'h Thomas is because he was, pouring praise on the freshman Lester, Howard, and Bolden. Bates. Certainly not Bolden. Bates. No, that's the wrong safety there, pal. But he was heaping praise on them, saying that typically freshmen are just swimming and they're just trying to get acclimated and get to the basics, and they're asking advanced stuff. So mentally, they're in a place advanced as true freshmen. We'll see if athletically they can do that as well. And I've learned some things over the years. Like there was a tour of duty when Azareye'h Thomas was a true freshman. I believe he was running in a group with Sam McCall, and I thought, that's it. Azareye'h is the one. That looks a little different. And I was right.
Yeah.
And last year I saw Jeremiah Byers. I'm like, that's going to be your starting left guard because look at that athleticism. And I was not right. So it'll be fun to hear you guys break down what you see and who stands out, because while it is a good indicator of athleticism, it is limited like the combine. It only tells you a portion of the story, and then you put on the pads and you get to sorting out who's the real and who's a guy who can win a foot race, but who's a guy who can play some football.
Yeah, and again, I'm hopeful Jeremiah Byers. I think there's a chance he takes a big step going into his second year in this system with Alex Atkins. But yeah, no, you're right. He's a guy that was all anybody wanted to talk about last year in tour of duty, whether it was when we were there or what we were hearing away from it. People just couldn't say enough about him, and he's definitely a tremendous athlete for an offensive lineman. Those transfer defensive linemen also. I mean, that's definitely got to be high on the list. I mean, the guys you mentioned earlier, but it should be a fun. And I also, Josh Farmer and Daryl Jackson have put out like some of their own social media. I think maybe Josh's brother has put out some social media of them doing their own work. And I think that those guys may put on a show too. So it's gonna be fun.
Yeah, with their trainer, they're doing box jumps and stuff like that. It's explosive. It's very, very impressive. And then the other video I saw recently was a Malik Benson dunk. It was Man, that dude's gonna look pretty good, I imagine. Spoiler alert. In the tour of duty. I hope that between what you see out of Hakeem, maybe he's available to the media soon, and then with Coach Dugans with the luncheon that happens just before practice starts, I'm sure everybody's going to get a good chuckle out of Hakeem Williams' tour of duty year 1 and year 2.
Oh, man.
Because they were all very transparent of, man, he's not in shape. He was not ready for this. I'm sure he took that as a challenge this offseason, and he's probably going to be somebody who shows out next week.
I'll be honest, man, that the improvement he made physically from what we saw in the spring when he first got there, and then the spring, and then by the preseason camp, that was stunning to me. I mean, I was worried about him in the spring, just as like, man, I don't know how much he's going to get out of this first year. And he must have had a great summer last year. And I think, this winter is probably great for him too. So yeah, man, there's an opportunity for those receivers, and that's going to be, interesting to see how that all shakes out.
So before we wrap up tonight, and Jane, thank you for the comment. She wants to see Destin Hill when healthy. I think everybody does, especially with a cannon of an arm from the quarterback that they've got now. That could be a lot of fun this spring and this fall. Ira, I know with baseball, we touched on basketball briefly, but with baseball, you have been, rightly so, in wait-and-see mode. I want to see, hey, let's hang on a minute. They had a couple of good weekends last year. Let's wait and see. They've only had a couple of good weekends this year. They're 7-0. Are you starting to believe a little bit, or do you want to see how it goes in
Yeah.
Greenville before you start to speak proudly of what you're seeing from Link Jarrett this season in the baseball program?
No, I'm definitely optimistic about it. I thought again last year, man, I just was so hopeful that they were gonna look like Florida State baseball again. The last couple of years had not really been very good, and then Link came in, and you hear so much about Link, and they had some talent, um, probably not as much as maybe we thought. And then also a lot of the pieces didn't really fit right. It was hard to put together a complete lineup, certainly defensively with the players they had. And then when the injury to the pitching staff and just things kind of unraveled. But yeah, man, I'm feeling pretty good about it. I mean, again, I want to see him against better competition because again, baseball to me, it's just one of those sports, especially when it comes to pitchers, where you can be dominant until you face good hitting, and then now you have to actually battle, and then also defensively you have to play. Link talked about that today or I guess they're already on the road for this tournament, but he did a Zoom with the media today. People can watch it on the channel, and he talked about it. They've had so many strikeouts, it's been hard to really get a great evaluation of the defense. So still a little bit wait and see mode, but yeah, man, it's I like the way they play. I like the passion. You have to love the passion of Cam Leiter, Drew Farrow, Jackson West. I mean, a lot of these new guys bring a lot of passion and excitement, and I think that's fun to see.
Yeah, all the starting pitchers. Jamie Arnold gets fired up.
Jamie Arnold definitely does.
Connor Whitaker got fired up. I forget, was it the end of the first inning for the double play? And then he had a really good second inning against USF. I was able to go to the game and watch that. They picked the baseball up very well on Tuesday night. They had some more chances. They were very good in the infield, and I know Diamez Ross was awesome out in center as well. That's going to be a fun thing to watch, and it's not one of those where you're dreading going to the app if you're in the north like me. You're like, all right, let's see what they can do today. Let's turn on the Noles and see what this baseball program looks like. We'll have you updated, of course, here on warchant.com, Warchant TV about that. Before we go, a couple of notes and some fun questions. I did see, we have it on our boards right now, that Kalen DeLoach's second unofficial time for his 40, linebacker Kalen DeLoach, 4.47.
All right.
4.47 for Kalen DeLoach in his
That's
second.
Moving.
That is moving, and that's important for him, Ira. We were talking about it. Just I think he'll profile as a special teamer plus. That's just me speculating. And a pass rusher. So if you show that top end speed that matches with the film of his knack for getting after the quarterback, that's really good news for Kalen DeLoach, who came in at just under 6 feet when they measured him at the combine in terms of his height. So that's one more note on the NFL combine. You can head to warchant.com for more notes. But now, okay. So to the wedding question, I know it's based upon how much liquor drinks there are. Is there a song? Do you know one of the dances? Is there anything is there an Irish O'Fell wedding reception tradition? Is there anything like that over the years, or are you just like, I'm just trying to get out of here alive?
Dude, I am and for people that don't pay attention to all of our content, so Corey's getting married this weekend. Corey and Stephanie are getting married this weekend, and I don't know. I think I'm more just I'm Corey. The way he is building up this dance, he and Stephanie are going to do. I don't know how to explain it. It's like I'm about to go on a ride for the first time. I just can't. I'm just curious to know what the hell this is, and then. Because it could be anything with those two, right? I mean, it could be
They
anything.
have been forming this over the months at Corner Pocket. I've been hearing about it, like the legends of what's to come, and you get it in bits and pieces. And I have no idea what we're about to watch. I have no idea. But I know they take it seriously. This is important to them. If it doesn't go well or there's a slip up, so make sure they're not fighting for one after the nuptials, making sure everybody's on the same page.
Yeah. So that's just consuming my mind. So I honestly, I can't remember the last wedding I've been to, dude. I'm 53 now. So I haven't been to a lot of weddings lately, and then COVID also. So now, I'll get out there for the chicken dance, the classics. But yeah, we'll see, man. I'm more going to be, I think, spectating for most of those activities.
All right. So last thing I'll ask you about that. I float from place to place, but are you more of the table guy? You stand near the bar guy, or stand around the dance floor guy?
stand around the bar probably more than anything, and get around and mingle. I am not a sit at table guy. I just, yeah.
It's just got bad energy. Like, unless maybe, if you're older or you're injured or whatever,
Right.
you want to feel festive. So,
or if you're like kids, or
Yep.
young people. I mean, I don't know. Yeah, but no, I've never. Yeah, I'm always get up and move around and walk around, and I think again, it's going to be an interesting environment because it's going to be outdoors, sort of, but not all out.
hopefully the weather holds up.
Yeah.
That's part of it. Jane says you have to have the video for us. Somebody's going to be taking the video.
Oh, for sure. I think everybody will.
Stay tuned to our IG channel for live from the no, we're not doing any IG live from the reception. This is, of course, a special edition of Monday Smash. As we said at the outset, I saw somebody asked a Thursday Smash. There's just scheduling conflicts, but we didn't want to miss a couple of weeks in a row. It's presented, as always, by our great sponsor, State Farm agent Russ Voorhis. If you missed it, you joined late, head to that website at the bottom of the screen, russvoorhis.com. He serves all of Florida, Georgia, and Alabama. And so for all the coverage that we're going to be having this weekend, Florida State baseball is up in Greenville, South Carolina, playing 3 Midwest teams on the diamond. More combine coverage. That's probably going to lead the way. Spring practice updates. Anything else you want to share with the people that's coming in the next few days at warchant.com?
Yeah, some of those spring practice previews are going to be rolling out. And then Matt Lasser has been, I'm always torn with it. Director Matthew, Matt Lasser. But Matt's got some recruiting updates, stories. They're about to get kids on campus again. They're in the dead period right now. Florida State is recruiting, obviously, but they can't do face-to-face stuff right now. But Matt's been cranking out updates on those guys. And then that'll ramp back up next week. They'll have players coming back to campus again.
Would you sign up for Jim Phillips giving the best man speech, or would you leave the room?
Man, that would be something. Jim, he's just, not a lot of charisma from that guy. And I think at this point, he's not doing a lot of public appearances.
This is a very special day here, and we've got it televised on the CW. That's all for tonight. He's Ira. I'm Tom. This has been a special edition of The Smash. Stay tuned to Warchant TV for more coverage of everything that's going on around Florida State. Hit the like button, subscribe as well to the channel. It's absolutely free. And head over to warchant.com for wall-to-wall coverage. We'll be with you a short time from now. We'll get together on The Smash a very short time from now. Thanks to the multiple hundred of you who checked in and also on the podcast who listened. He's Ira. I'm Tom. We'll talk to you next time right here on